So she's taking all the videos just now. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't quite see.
I'm not sure if it's over to us straight away, Maggie.
Hi there. Hi.
Hello. That's a slightly awkward start. Sorry, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I was just sitting here, sort of going, oh, I wonder when we start. And I was like, you start, Jenny. Come on, you're cheering. Goodness sake. Right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the launch of Maggie Gibson's Wild Women of a Certain Age, a 21-year anniversary edition and a very special celebration. My name's Jenny Lindsay. I'm going to be chairing the session and taking your questions, chatting with Maggie. These Zoom events are always slightly weird at the start, but me and Maggie spend a lot of time meeting up and just chatting, so I'm just going to pretend that that's exactly what we're doing just now. But for those of you who don't know, you are attending the book launch of Maggie Gibson's 21st anniversary edition of Wild Women of a Certain Age, an incredibly important collection, both 21 years ago and just now. Maggie is the author of 7 collections of poetry and the seriously sassy children's books. She's been widely published in many anthologies, including Modern Scottish Women Poets and the Edinburgh Book of 20th Century Scottish Poetry. She's been the recipient of Scottish Arts Council Creative Writing Fellowships, and she's read and performed nationally and internationally, and also in many a Glasgow bar as well. She also founded the Wild Women Writing Workshops as well, which I and many other Scottish female writers have benefited hugely from. On a personal level, this is never put on poets' CVs, but Maggie has supported and mentored so many poets and writers in Scotland, and I think it's always worth pointing that out because it's a rare thing indeed. So this collection is absolutely stunning. I'm just going to share the cover quote from the poet Ali Whitelock, who's actually here all the way from Australia in her jammies in the chat, and she described it as intoxicating, tender, at times devastating. These poems still sing with a ferocious love and a necessary rage. And I think that is an absolutely perfect introduction. And we're going to kick things off with Maggie sharing 3 or 4 poems from the collection. Then we will have a wee bit of a chat, and then Maggie will do some more poems, and then we will have your questions. So raise your glass of whatever. I have some very tasty Merlot, and give some virtual applause as we welcome Maggie Gibson. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny, for that wonderful introduction. And I should say it's been my pleasure over the years to work with so many wonderful people like yourselves. And it's lovely just seeing the chat coming up at the side. My eyesight's not brilliant, but I can just about read it. And I see that there's people from all over. So thank you so much for zooming in tonight to be with me to celebrate this book. It really does feel wonderful to see wild women of a certain age coming back. I'm going to start this evening with a poem. A character who recurs in this book is Queen Maeve, and Queen Maeve is from Irish mythology, so she may have been real. She probably was real, but of course the stories that built up around her became something else altogether. And I've built the stories up again by transposing Queen Maeve to essentially the turn of the millennium Scotland, because it seemed to me we needed the Queen Maeve. We really needed a Queen Maeve as we were just hitting, say, the turn of the millennium there, because women needed that type of role model. Queen Maeve, as a Celtic woman and a Celtic queen, really took a hold of her life. She had her own army for a start, and when her husband, who was king of another tribe in Ireland, fell out with her over the possession of a bull, Queen Maeve went to war with him. You know, that was the kind of woman she was, and she was in charge of her own sexuality as well. And she had her own army. Her army was called the Men of Ireland. So I just loved the idea of this woman. She seemed to be a wild woman after my own heart. So this poem is called Queen Maeve Addresses a Reluctant Lover. What do you fear in me, young man? Did your mother tell you at her knee of tortures suffered by Tam Lin? Do you think that, like the fairy queen, stripped of my sensuous gowns of silk, my makeup and my anti-wrinkle cream, I'll turn into a fierce Cailleach with winter in my hair and creviced skin? Or have they told you old men's tales of girls with teeth between their thighs that chew, or worse still, bite? Or is it that you fear being sucked back to the womb on a tidal wave of hot desire, into that cave, that bowl of fire, where birth and life and death dance and reel beneath a blood-red moon? Ha! I am no hair-legged spider, no praying mantis beast that would have my fun, then feast upon your flesh. I am no olive-skinned Delilah, who would shear your hair and leave you feeble as a child. Listen to the blood that beats, so hot and red and wild within your breast. Feel your hunger grow, much stronger than your fear. Come now, my brave young man. Come, lie down here. So you see, I was playing with a lot of ideas of the way the sexually active and proactive woman gets all these negative tales built up around her to have her branded in some ways very, very dangerous, in a way which, of course, the male doesn't. And these are sort of ideas, some of the ideas that I play with in this collection. Another poem which I thought I would read just in these small selections, it's completely different, and it's called Bat Song. And it kicked off because I lived out in the country, and we often left the curtains wide open at night with a beautiful big window, and we'd have all the little pipistrelle bats flying around. And I was both entranced by them and scared of them as well. And sometimes when you write a poem, you don't really know what it is. I think the best poems that you write, you don't really, as a poet, know what it is that you're really writing about. And it's probably something that's troubling you at a deeper level. And even then, when you've written it, it can take some time or someone else discussing it with you before you think, oh, right, that's actually really what it was, subconsciously coming up through. And afterwards, it's really about othering Bat Song. And I think now at 21 years distance, I actually think this is about, to some extent, the difficulty that we have a lot of the time, not between all men and all women, but between men and women. And I see at the moment huge difficulties between the sexes of women making themselves understood and heard. And I come back to this poem sometimes, but at the time I was kind of writing about the bats as well. So this is Bat Song. So, our features offend. Too shrunken skulled, too rat-eyed, ugly web-winged embryos, skinny in leather and slinky fur. Do you find our forms too Nazi for your civilized sensibilities? You blame the moon for our presence, but we have always been, are always here. Armies of us sleeping in your soulless churches, fornicating in the rafters, pissing on prayer books and pews, or lurking in dark, dank places your kind once too inhabited. We stream at dusk like smoke into your streets, scribe the thin black air with strange graffiti. You claim we make your flesh crawl, appearing out of darkness and silence. Is it our fault, sir, that you are deaf to the beauty of our songs? I should have said it's a certain type of woman. The ones that go out in the broomsticks, probably, that they have a bother hearing, and they don't like it when we speak too loud and get heard. So, but then a certain type of poem can be read so many different ways at different times. I think it could also be said that that is about asylum seekers. It could be said it's about any strangers, any others who are upsetting the status quo. And it's about the wee bats that were in my garden. Another poem, which is another transgressive poem. And I think quite a lot of the poems in this collection would be seen as, that was part of the joy of writing the collection, is that they are transgressive. Some of the poems in it, they shouldn't be transgressive, but they seemed to be transgressive, and they probably still are in some ways. So this one's called Just Like Eve. I could have brought you whiskey to warm you on winter nights, poems full of words to fill your silences. I could have brought you armfuls of flowers to fill your rooms with summer, scented petals to scatter where you dream. I could have brought olives, shiny, black and green, anchovies and parmesan, Chianti, deep blood red. I could have brought figs, dates, kumquats, lychees, tastes to make your senses sing, to set your soul adrift. Instead, I brought forbidden fruit, the one and only gift you would not accept. And I think I'm going to leave it there just now, Jenny, and we can chat.
That was so wonderful. I love all of your poems very, very much. The bats one is great. I'll just fill you in a little bit because I'm on the chat, so I'll give you a couple of comments that we've had so far. Alan Bissett was saying that he actually has his original copy sitting there with him just now, so that's lovely. And Sharon Orcutt says that she wants every girl child to receive your book as a gift at birth. So that's quite a ringing endorsement as well. So that's nice. Well, thank you so much for that. There's so much that we could talk about, but I've come up with a couple of quite broad questions, I suppose, just to get things started. And one of them is actually quite a simple question. Maggie, what actually is a wild woman? Because we have this image in our head of what a wild woman might be. It might be a woman who's like really reckless or whatever, but to you, what actually is or makes a wild woman?
Yeah, well, it is only for me because everyone has the right to make their own decision on this. But for me, it's not really about dancing on the tables. You know, I don't think I've really been one for dancing on tables, although I might have got pretty close to that a couple of times. But for me, it's about, if you think about, for me, it's about being, it's a wee bit kind of almost the opposite. It's about being a woman who is in control of herself and who's in control of herself enough that she will dance on the tables if she wants to. So it's to be, I think women have so many controls put on them. And it's saying, I am so in control of myself, I'm going to burst through all those controls. And I'm going to choose the ones which I live by. And I am fed up with the hashtag be nice. I mean, I've said this before. You know, I mean, really, I nearly swore there.
I think it's fine for swearing, isn't it?
No, I mean, like, I could do a few other hashtags for you. Be angry, you know, be yourself, and don't accept all of these false boundaries. A wild woman actually knows what the boundaries she wants are, and she knows the boundaries she wants to put on other people. It's not about everybody being wild. It's about saying, these are my boundaries, and you cross them, and I'll be wild.
I love that. Totally.
And it's about being in control. And I noticed that in the book, when I was sort of coming back to, not that I've ever really been away from it, but when I was looking at it and thinking about it again, and I had to write an introduction, which I was really, really happy to write because it was lovely to be doing this retrospective on it. And I noticed that the number of poems where I'm driving. And I thought, well, that's really odd. And I'm taking great joy in driving in the poem. So I should really read the driving poem, I suppose. And I realized that the driving, much as I was driving a lot at that point in my life, but the driving is also, again, metaphorical. It's about a woman in the driving seat. And that is so important. If you're not in the driving seat of your own life, then there's a few questions need answered. And it's not about whether you've got a license.
Brilliant.
It'd be better to drive badly and still be in the driving seat of your own life. So that for me is what the answer to the wild woman thing.
I love that. I'm gonna write that out and stick it on like my wall. It's about it doesn't matter if I'm driving badly as long as I'm in the driving seat, because
Yeah, try not to tell anything, you know, try try to be responsible in that way, but it's for yourself. It's who you are for yourself, and it's so important to know that. And you could be a wild woman who's actually lives a really quiet life. That's the point. It's doing it the way you want to do it. And our lives, my life, and I mean, I had wonderful parents. I had wonderful, loving parents. I'm very, very lucky that way. But my life, and I mentioned some of this in the introduction, my life was so full of restrictions from society. And a lot of them were invisible. So it's only as I've got older, and even now, I sit at the age I am now, and I get very angry, actually. I get very angry when I look back and I can see so much more clearly all the invisible constrictions that were put on me, and even on my children's generation. So that's you're the same age as one of my daughters, Jenny, and I see it happening still.
Yeah, reading your book, obviously I've been a fan for quite some time, Maggie, but also as I think I'm maybe just slightly younger than you were when you published this.
Yeah, well, I was in my mid-40s, yeah.
Mid-40s, yeah. So I turned 40 in a couple of months, and what I think is that the opening poem actually is a poet on reaching 40.
Well, I give you a wee taste of that.
Yes, do. That would be great.
So I wrote I must have written that poem just a few years before the thing got, yeah, I wrote that at the kitchen table just when the kids had gone to school. I'm sorry, I apologise to everyone right now, that this was what I was writing when my kids had just gone off to school. And then I scribbled it on a piece of paper, and I came back and I looked at it and I thought, oh, for goodness sake. Anyway, the female poet on reaching 40. She's suddenly aware of crow's feet marching round her eyes, of orange peel upon her thighs, and silver strands appearing in her hair. She looks around. She is astounded. She is surrounded by younger men. And so she whispers to herself, fuck 40 then. So, you know, I should have been feeling really beaten down at that point.
No, I highly approve. And so on that, actually, my other sort of really broad question was just sort of reflecting really on the 21 years since the publication, perhaps you know, the impetus of putting the collection out back then, and what the sort of scene or whatever it was like back then, and sort of the impetus for re-releasing it now. I completely agree with what Ali and others have said in their blurbs. I mean, these poems ring as true now as they ever would have done.
Thank you.
And I don't know if that's frustrating, actually, that some of them really do, but perhaps you can speak more.
Yeah, I mean, the impetus for putting it out then was, to be honest, a lot of these poems, most of them were written within that sort of couple of years point, and they came with this tremendous burst of energy, which I seemed to get. I was probably about the 45, 46 mark, and I seemed to get them in a sort of perimenopausal surge. I seem to get this power surge, and I see people, you know, there's a lot getting written about menopause and perimenopause, and I do seem to see quite a lot of negativity about that. And I keep saying, oh my God, I got this power surge. You know, it was like, so it can be, there can be quite a positive thing goes on there too once the hormones start to go jigglety. Whoop.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, and it just seemed to be, and I think probably a stage I'd reached in my development as a poet, and I wanted things to be different. So it's like be the change you want to see type thing. I wanted to write the change I wanted to see. And I think there was, and fair play to Chapman and Joy Hendry, the editor at Chapman, who can't be here tonight, she sent her apologies earlier, because she was very open and receptive to these poems. And the Ray Ross, editor at Syncrastus, which was one of the main arts and literary magazines at the time as well. So Joy was editor at Chapman, which in Scotland was a leading literary magazine. And both of them were so receptive, and I was blasting out these poems. And it kind of, I because they were receptive, it gave me a tremendous boost. And so between, they published a fair number of the poems, and then I got them together into a collection, and quite a few other places. Des Dillon published the title poem in his Cutting Teeth magazine at the time. And so but the poems were going out and really hitting home. So I felt I got them together into a collection and put them at Chapman, which was seen as being a very difficult place, which was a very difficult place to get a collection into. And Joy was just so positive and edited them. And the new collection, which is coming out, has got quite a few extra poems in, which were written at the time, and were published in different places, but for various reasons, we left out. But some of them have been anthologized other places since, and I thought, let's put them in. So there's quite a few. So Alan Bissett, there's quite a few extra poems in this one, as well as my introduction. So they've been, they're in there now because they've been, as I say, anthologized elsewhere. So it's the original collection plus some extras from that time, so that they're in terms of how I feel about them still being necessary. One of the poems in there, No Angel, which quite a few of the people here will know this poem, was written at the time that court case happened, which was 93. And again, that was a poem which just burst from me. It was a reactive poem. So one or two of those poems in there had been around and waiting to go into collection. And because my first collection came out in it was either 92 or 93, but that obviously missed that. And it breaks my heart when I see that court cases or comments are still made. This was made quite recently when that lovely young woman, 16-year-old, was abducted from the bus stop in Plymouth. I think it was Plymouth, and the mayor said, "Oh, women have to be, and girls have to be careful where they walk at night." I mean, for goodness sake. So it shows you how slowly things move, and why these types, the subjects I write on, the subjects about women and about feminism and about how we are treated in the world, and about how in my opinion, we need to react, or we can react. It's a long haul. I also think we're going through a reaction, backlash against feminism from Me Too. Me Too took us forward a fair amount. And I think we are getting, I'm afraid we're paying for it. Anyone with their eyes open can see it. And therefore, these poems can serve a purpose again, if only to give us some food to nurture us, to nourish us, to say, yes, we have got fight in us. Yes, we are on the right tracks. We can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your poems are really clarifying. I mean, and that's, to me, that's one of the jobs of poetry. You clarify a lot of these incredibly huge and incredibly intense experiences. I mean, from relationships to your wonderful poem about the Tupperware parties and all. I mean, all of these things I remember, from I mean, I've never had a Tupperware party, but I do remember my mum having them, and also the pressures to be the perfect wife or the perfect daughter. All of these different things you really, really crystallize, and so much of that. I'm going to share just one more comment from the chat, and then perhaps you could read another few poems for us, perhaps some of the ones you've mentioned. It's Alan Bissett again, he's very chatty. He said that you were the first really great performer of poetry that he ever saw. So there you go. Hooray!
Oh. Right, so that's
Brilliant.
something. Thank you, Alan.
so-
From a performer like Alan, that is quite a compliment. I'll get him to write that down and I'll put it on my blog.
Brilliant. So yeah, if you're going to share some poems, I turned my camera off because I just felt you should be the focal point. But I am still here if you prefer me to leave it on.
No, I think that's a good idea. Thanks, that's lovely of you to do that.
Over to you, Maggie.
Thank you very much. One of the ways that I treat when it's the fairy tales and border ballads is to try and look at what's really happening in them. So a border ballad like Tam Lin, for example, I don't really feel that it does justice to the women in the story. We've got the fairy queen on the one hand who comes along and is supposed to have seduced Tam Lin and taken him off. And then there's Janet, who doesn't really come into my poem, but his fiancée Janet's supposed to go to the bother of winning him back. And I think, why does Janet go to any bother to win this man back? This man had agency. He did not have to go with the fairy queen. He had choices there. Come on, he was a man. She was just the fairy queen. So I think it's one of those stories where which excuses the man by making out that she has got special powers and all the rest, and he'd absolutely no choice in the matter. So in my poem, The Truth About Tam Lin, I make the point that even people without magic powers like Tam Lin knew of plenty of things that they were supposed to do to avoid getting carried off by the fairies. So if you know any of your fairy lore, you'll recognise some of the stuff at the start, like having a rowan planted, and the fairy queen or the witch or whoever can't cross over go into your garden or anything unless you name them, unless you ask them in, all these types of things. So you'll see how this poem goes. But it's really, again, about just saying, we have all these stories we're getting from very young, where if you take the time to look at them, we are getting negative messages about the women and positive messages about the men. The truth about Tam Lin. There was no rowan planted at your gate. Oh, sorry, I should say this is the fairy queen speaking. There was no rowan planted at your gate. It was your hand that opened it, your smile that welcomed me, your voice that asked me in. Did you not see the warning signs, the way my black hair loosened from its tightly tied back bun into noose-like coils, into loaded springs? How could you have missed the triple purple irises, the green glow from my eyes? Not even when I took my jerkin off and hung it on a moonbeam did you express surprise or recall tales your mother told of fairy women who would kiss your lips, then suck the marrow from your soul. You, with your peat brown eyes and your king-size bed, its silken sheets drawn back in cool anticipation, in open invitation, your tapestries of courtiers and courtesans gazing down from scenes of coy seduction. Okay, so I had swapped my snow-white steed for a Harley Davidson, my robes of shimmering green and gold for blackest leather and blue denim. But my bright-eyed boy, with the hunger in your groin and the fever on your brow, don't ever claim you didn't know the score when you placed your lips on mine, cool as water from a shaded glen, when you let your hands explore the heaths and mountains of my realm. Don't claim it was a spell I cast, a fairy arrow in your ear or hemlock slipped into your wine. You bounded to my arms, eager as a cock runs to the hen. You weren't pushed or pulled, but like a silver moth that flies towards the moon, Like a salmon seeking out the stony womb, you made your way alone, Tam Lin. You gladly rushed right in. So, so that's poor old Tam Lin in the 21st century getting put in his place. And keeping it, back to that driving seat and putting, and I'll keep with they're not all on these. Oh no, hold on, I'll do something a wee bit different. Oh yeah, Sheila Nagig. The Sheila Nagigs particularly in Ireland, although I think there's at least one in Scotland. You know, the little Sheila Nagig, the little stone carved women who have their vulvas on display. And again, they were probably fertility symbols in pagan times, but then they tried very hard. Sometimes they were put into stones in churches and things, and then when they were discovered, there were attempts to destroy them. Some still exist, but well, the poem tells you what happened to them. And I think again, it was that attempt to destroy healthy female sexuality. So my poem is a celebration of the Sheila Nagig and the healthy female sexuality. Sheila Nagig. Splay-thighed, moon-belly sister, you stare defiance with your 4 wide eyes. You grin wild mischief with your 2 broad smiles. You dare mild-mannered men and lady-labelled women to hold your brazen gaze. How much I long to be like you, naked and true, never hiding your lustful light below the bushel of false modesty. How many curious eyes have dropped their lids before your honesty? How many more have stopped to stare and wonder what unhallowed hands would dare to sculpt you from cold stone? They tried to kill you once, called you shameless harlot, whore, burned you with flames of righteous indignation, drowned you for the open invitation you give for fun and fornication. Perhaps they feared your bold reminder, we are born of women, men are not gods. Sheila Nagig, old lady who squats, lackey Saba, weathered by millennia of storm and scorn. When the moon is full and the stars are burling wildly in the sky, do you leap around our winter fields running with the old grey wolves? Do you bauble belly dance so Demeter will laugh again and free Persephone from the underworld's dark tomb? And that's part of what I'm wanting to do with this book, is just celebrate the wonderfulness of healthy female sexuality. This poem Jenny referred to there, which is the well-behaved daughter, is called Shh. They found me in the corner, way at the back of my mother's wardrobe. At first they thought I was a button broken loose from a frayed thread, or a mothball happy in the dark. Then, as I grew, they thought I was a shoe without a partner, but they were busy folk. It was easier to poke me back beside the fallen jumpers and the missing socks. As for me, I was quite content, tucked up in the folds of mother's frocks. From time to time, she'd drag me out, wear me dangled prettily on the end of her arm. The ultimate accessory, a quiet daughter. Well, that didn't work out too well. No, My parents were wonderful, but my mother was a bit shocked that I was prepared to put everything out in public. And I'll finish this part on this poem, Fruit Machine. You know the guy at the pub that won't let you just sit quietly with a drink on your own? I was waiting for a friend in a pub with a drink on my own. There was also a fruit machine in the pub, which is why the poem is called Fruit Machine. I wink at the fruit machine. It winks back, orange, red, green, while I sit drinking long, cool glasses of iced loneliness. The guy in the corner thinks I'm winking at him. Over he ambles, one hand clutching a half-drunk pint, the other jingling pennies in his pocket, as if he thinks I'm easy as a wedding waiting for the scramble. I do not return his hot, hungry glance. I'm staring at the fruit machine. The man has not a chance. Coldness floods from me, tangible as the cold from an open freezer door, and he's a fool in a short-sleeved shirt, trudging through the tundra of my glower. So what does he do? Slides between me and my machine, stands legs akimbo, thrusts his groin against its metal hips, slips a coin between its metal lips, presses the right buttons, and suddenly it's orgasmic, flashing and wailing and screaming out for more. If only women were so simple, eh? And that's it for me at the moment, Jenny.
Brilliant. I've met that guy a lot.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And we've had a couple of really good questions actually, and a request, which is excellent.
Right.
There might well be. Sorry, I have to share this comment from Sharon, who's just posted. I divorced that guy, which is just hilarious.
Excellent. Excellent, Sharon. Lots to hear. Oh.
Sorry, I just need to compose myself a little bit. Right, so there's a couple of really meaty questions, one of which actually ties into something I wanted to ask as well. And there is a request from the wonderful Ali for one of your poems. So I think we're actually doing really well for time. I should touch wood while I say that.
Great.
So the first question is from Marcus Turner.
Hi, Marcus.
And he wants to ask you what you consider to be the role of poets and the form we peddle in within contemporary society, and whether this has changed since your collection was first published. Huge question.
All right. Well, I'm really not sure what the role of poets is, and I think it's very broad these days. So what's changed certainly since I was first writing, which is I started very, very start of it was 1985, but it was probably more about late 80s, 90 that I was publishing seriously. And certainly the role was very, very narrow then. We didn't have social media, and it really was very much literary magazines. So there was a real narrowness to it. You didn't have that public reach. Although the Tupperware Torture poem, that was when I was first writing. It was mid 80s, late 80s, and it was from a women's group, and it went into the Scotsman, the popular appeal. That was my first published poem, but in the whole there wasn't that wider popular appeal, although my work I think always kind of did have. And but now with social media, I think there's a huge, it's really widened out, and there's a much bigger audience, plus the number of people writing is massive compared to back then, and that's because of the social media. So it's quite different, and the literary magazines aren't, it's not as narrow as it was back then. What was the other bit of the poem? Yeah, what's the role of the poet? So I'm not sure what the role of the poet is, because it is so broad now. I think it's very hard to say what the role of the poet always has been. I think that's very, very wide. I can only say what my own role
Yes.
is, I suppose, and I see my own role, apart from just keeping going at this point, which I think a couple of years ago actually was feeling a bit, there were attempts, I think, to cancel me. I think I'll just be honest about that.
Why not?
Yes, I'll just be honest. There were attempts to cancel you as well, Jenny. So let's be honest about that. And in Scotland, and we and I my words are getting mad. I nearly give into it.
Yeah.
I nearly, there's quite a lot in the news now, which there wasn't at that point. But when you come under that kind of onslaught and you don't even fully understand what it is that you're supposed to have done wrong, because you haven't done anything wrong, then you are left psychologically and emotionally very battered and bruised by it.
Which isn't a great place from writing poetry from, no matter what these whole you got to be a tortured artist stereotypes say.
No, that's nonsense.
You can't focus enough.
Listen, living as a woman in this world, often I think you've got enough things you're up against, particularly, and coming into poetry world in the 1980s, and I've written a fair bit about that, you're up against enough already trying to break in to a world which was not welcoming to women in any case. And there is enough evidence of that. And I have documented some of that myself. I did not need this at this point in my life.
No.
Emotionally. I fought for women to get platforms, and having been one of those who fought for women to get platforms and who specifically championed women, as well as many other disadvantaged groups throughout my 35 years of working life, working in those areas. I certainly was not ready or expecting in any way to be cancelled. So that took a lot of guts to get through. So to be at this point now, able to write at all and able to continue and be here in public, my role as a poet is to keep telling my truth.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of your poem, which I reread today, called What Drives Me? Because it's that question that's always asked of poets and writers, isn't it? It's like, what drives you? And I was thinking about what you said at the beginning about the driving poems, and the line in that poem, I'm driven by the ordinary madness of existence. I think we've had quite a lot of both ordinary and extraordinary madness to contend with, and I think it's absolutely to your credit that you rise above it and just keep going, because that's exactly what we all want.
And I think funnily enough, at the live lunch the other night in the Dram, I read that poem because I'd read a driving poem. I was talking about that driving thing, and I said, and funnily enough, when I used to go and read in do readings in places like Cluthan, and I got these, you know, the things that you're up against as a woman that you're not up. I mean, people are up against it. I'm working class as well. You know, I hear nobody ever asked that when I was younger. I'm a totally working class woman. I had two very successful poems early on, and one of them was successful because I read it at the first two poems were, one was Tupperware Torture, and the other one was My Father's Dungarees. And I read it at, my first ever reading was an event for the miners' wives after the miners' strike, and in 1985. And it was an event for the miners' wives and for what they had done at Stirling Miners' Welfare Club. And I read that poem, and it took My Father's Dungarees, and it took the roof off the place. There were about 200 people there. I had never read a poem in public before.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
That's my roots, and that's where I come from. And I'll read, if I may, just what drives me, you ask.
Yeah.
And that anybody would have accused me of not having people's best interests at heart is just ridiculous. So what drives me, you ask? As if I'm a juggernaut, with a hairy armed trucker at my wheel, or a shiny car or train bolting through the landscape of my life. Perhaps the wind drives me, I say, as it drives the sleet and snow that sting and numb the senses. But no, I am driven by the fire that rages in my head when I see a wife beaten, a child branded evil, a junkie begging with a paper cup, a woman in a blaze of kerosene, a child with fag burns on her feet, with rope marks on her neck, with bruises on her thighs, with pain in her heart. I am driven to violence against my typewriter. I plead guilty to battering its pale keys, to bruising the blank indifference of 1,000 sheets of paper. I am driven by a driver without a license. I am driven by the ordinary madness of existence.
I think I'll share what Deirdre has just said. You're an inspiration, Maggie, and you absolutely are. And I've thought that for a long, long time. We've got one more kind of broad question, and I did want to ask you about this yourself. It kind of ties into something you say in the introduction about sort of silencing and voice or the lack of it. But Sharon's actually asked, do you feel your Scottish blood and history contributes to your depth of words? Her point was that her family's originally from the borderlands, and she thinks that it does. And what I kind of wanted to ask, almost as an addendum to that, was how you went about sort of choosing the women's stories from folklore and mythology or history that you've kind of retold. I don't know if that's a messy question, but do you know what I mean? So maybe, yeah, if you take both of those together.
Well, I think so. I mean, the Scottish thing is quite funny because I went through a phase just in the late 90s, so just when I was starting to write these poems, and it was just totally by chance. I picked up a couple of books about Celtic mythology, and also one book in particular was I used to go to this book. I didn't have much money. I used to go to this bookshop that it was like a bargain books, but it was in Stirling, in the arcades in Stirling. I had really interesting, weird books for like £2. And I would just pick up what they had that interested me. And I picked up this academic book on Celtic women. And I was reading all about Celtic women. And of course, Celtic women had much more, in some ways, it was a matrilineal lineage for property and stuff, if I remember correctly. And they could divorce their husband by just saying 3 times, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. Sorry, husband dear. and things like that. And I learned so much from it. And that's where I started to learn about all the, I also learned about all the different, about Queen Maeve and lots of Deirdre of the Sorrows is in there as well, and lots of these different stories. And at the same time, I got another book on Celtic women, and it was really tapping into something. And then I just was coming across things like the border ballads, and it's just where my mind works. I think my mum was like that, though. My mum used to, when we were watching cowboy films, westerns, just as a family. I remember my dad was a champion, a Scottish champion wrestler and weightlifter. And my mother would be sitting there going, when there was this fight broke out in the saloon, the women would all go scattered to the edges, and the men would be punching and everything. And my mother would be sitting shouting to the women at the edges, "Oh, for goodness sake, pick that stool up and hit him over the head." So I was sort of brought up, if you like, I mean, I was in a non-violent family, but I was brought up to think, why is the woman not there? You know, so I was brought up to feel empowered, that I should be taking part, not that I should be standing at the side. So in terms of so when I read something like Tam Lin, and Janet is supposed to be in order to get her fiance back, I could just hear my mother's voice going, "Well, why would she want him back?"
No, I think it's really great, and also the ones where you sort of put them in more modern, contemporary situations as well, because that highlights both their story and just almost the absurdity of.
But you couldn't get him more Scottish. So to get a Scottish, but you couldn't get him more Scottish than my mother. But my father is actually from a Northern Irish family.
Of course, yeah.
Right, and so my grandparents on that side I didn't know because they died before I was born. But my father's family is actually Northern Irish, but he said that they were obviously they were settlers, so he was. He said they were sent to Northern Ireland for sheep stealing, and then they were sent back for sheep stealing. So, so it is very Scottish, and yes, I am. I do have a real. Probably Lowland Scottish. I know Mum's family's a big bit of it's from Arran, but I have a very Lowland Scottish thing. And yes, I think we are all affected by where we are from, our roots. I do think of a Scots and Irish thing going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Ridiculously, we technically only have 5 minutes left. However, we might run over by like a few minutes, people, if that's okay. Sorry, Lewis, I am a professional. Because we do have a request as well, and it's from Ali Whitelock, who is very, very dear to both yourself and me. I absolutely love her. And she has requested, I wrote it down, she said that she loves all the comic poetry that's in the collection. So if there's time, and I'm just going to say there is, could you also share, as well as obviously you're going to do your final poem, could you do personal and social development as well?
Yeah, well, Ali is Scottish, but she lives in Sydney, so she won't be totally au fait with what's happening in the Scottish news at the moment. And personal, social and social development is, of course, about sex education. And the Scottish news, Scottish government is in quite deep, quite hot water at the moment. Not exactly about sex education, but about some of the questions it's wanting to ask Scottish secondary school pupils about their sex lives. But this was written, so it wouldn't be quite as innocent today, thanks to social media. But it was written, I used to teach sex education in, I taught in a special off-site unit for teens who were excluded from mainstream school, but I also was a secondary school teacher a long time ago as well. And the poem was partly out of those experiences and partly out of a Radio 4 programme that I heard, where they were asking kids, first years at the school gate, about their sex education, and it was just hilarious, their take on it. It was youngster, it was 13-year-olds, and it was just hilarious, their take on it. So this is called Personal and Social Development. We had sex today. Period 3 with Miss Sprott. We covered all the big stuff. First got gonorrhea, VD, herpes, crabs. Then we saw some overheads of the sexual organs, and Miss Sprott spluttered some about IUDs and Dutch caps, and Ailey said she'd always thought they were magic mushrooms. And Miss asked, is a 6 to 9 sex with a smallish ice cream and a flake? And Miss Sprott burnt bright scarlet and said we'd better stick to the bare essentials of the topic. The bit with the condom and the cucumber and the suicidal cream was a real giggle. The rest was a bit of drag, which Miss Sprott said all was anyway. Vastly overrated, she insisted, and Ailey whispered, like she'd know. Afterwards, me and Ailey couldn't wait to rush behind the bike sheds for a fag. Next week, we're doing childbirth. So.
It's good I muted myself because I was actually like snorting Merlot out my nostrils there, because I've read that. I don't know that I've heard you perform that one. That's brilliant. I absolutely love it. And yeah, how topical as well. Like the idea that I've been a teacher as well, the idea that like any secondary school kid is going to take anything seriously to do it. Like, so tell us how many times you, yeah, anyway. So we are wrapping up now, which is weird. Oh my God, it has completely flown by. And Maggie, I think, you know, obviously you want to finish with the title poem. And I'll say a few words after you've done that as well. But thank you so much to absolutely everyone for your brilliant comments and your support for Maggie. Isn't she absolutely wonderful? So with the final poem of the evening, here is Maggie.
And just before I do a couple of things, I would like to say thank you to Jenny, obviously. That was brilliant, Jenny. I'll probably come back to that. But also thank you to Lewis Press, to Thomasine, who has been our technical wizard for tonight, and to Gavin of Lewis Press, who has just been an absolutely wonderful publisher for me over my last couple of collections as well. And I'm just so grateful to Gavin for doing this, to Rachel, my editor, and to Jenny Renton, who helped out as well with this collection. The team at Lewis, and to Lauren as well. The team at Lewis has just been marvellous to work with, fantastic publisher. So I'd like to finish with, and thank you to all of you for coming, of course, and I can't quite, my eyesight is so useless, I can't quite read the comments at the side, but I think Thomasine is going to save them for me so that I can read them properly afterwards. But it's just so lovely of you all to have come. And also there will be a thing at the end that the book will be on sale. And I know that people at Alan Bissett have got the original, but this one has got extra poems in it. So there. As well as the intro. So, and it makes a lovely Christmas present. So if you would be prepared to buy it, that would be wonderful, and to support my publisher as well as myself. But I would like to finish with the poem Wild Women of a Certain Age, because especially for all of you women out there, this poem is for all of us. Wild women of a certain age. My sisters, the time has come to let your hair grow long and wild and grey, to cast away the heated rollers and the tongs. So when the moon is 9 months full, let us meet out on our lawns. Let us burn our diet sheets. Let us pound our bathroom scales to heaps of rusting springs. Let us shred our measuring tapes, our firmer buttocks videos. Let us burn an effigy of Cher. Let us tip our eye creams down the pan. Let us revel in our pink, plump ripeness. Let us wear our stretch marks like shining honours. Let us celebrate ourselves because we can. For we have bodies that have loved. We have bodies that have lived. Mouths that have savoured cheese and meat and dribbled over chocolate and fruit. Tongues that have tasted good and evil. Lips that have sipped fine wine. Fingers that have stroked. We have been the carriers of babes. Our bellies have swollen with drumlin curves. Our breasts have hung like ripened fruit. Our teeth have bitten skin and threads. We have swallowed bitter pills. We have known dark bloodstains on our hands. We have been the carriers of laughter and of pain, the healers of our children's ills. We have lain below the stars. We have lain below our men. Yes, sisters, now the time has come to claim our bodies for ourselves, for in our silver hair, our well-filled thighs, in those laughter lines that crowd our eyes, we live, we are alive. Thank you very much, everyone.
I think you're going to be sending lots of people singing out into the night with that. What an absolutely wonderful hour! Yeah, it's totally flown by, as us chatting often does. Thank you so much, Maggie. Please do buy the book. Lewis Press will be, I believe, sending a reminder email to do that around to all participants. It's an absolutely fantastic collection, and what an achievement, and what a woman. see all your applauding in the chat. So Maggie sees it later. Thanks so much for having me. Lewis, I don't know if you say a few words before we wrap this up or not. If you can keep me right, I should have checked.
No.
No.
Okay. But thank you. Thanks again to everyone who's come along tonight. It just has been, it's been a real treat. It's very odd for Jenny and I because we aren't getting any, it's not like when it's a real event and we can hear and we get applause or we can see faces. So it is quite strange to do it this way. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the comments. And hopefully next year, I do hope to get out and about 2 festivals, 2 bookshops, hopefully can come to a bookshop near you or to an event near you, and we shall get to get to meet some of you. And I also am selling books too. If anybody wants a signed book, then if you know me on Facebook, then just get in touch. If you don't know me on Facebook, just ask to be my friend.
Yeah, somebody was actually asking about getting a signed copy. So yeah, that's how to do it. Thank you all so much. I see
someone asking if I'm going to be doing Wigtown Literary Festival. I am in touch with them and I'm asking them, please, because I believe it or not, I did Wigtown Book Festival, as I pointed out to the director, when the book first came out. So I sent him a photo of me signing my books, or sent a photo when I was first there 21 years ago. And he said, yes, he remembers, and they'll see about if they can get me back. So hopefully that will happen. But that would be great. So
that would be wonderful. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Somebody asking me if I'm going to be coming to Australian Perth. So get your borders open. I would love to. I've been to Sydney before to see Ali Whitelock. Try and see Ali Whitelock. Yeah, yes, please come back to us. Yes, Ali, I want to come back and see you. To get these borders open. I would love to come back. Yeah, and Ali, we want you in Scotland as well. Come on. Oh, and Bantry. Oh, Catherine Curley want me back to Bantry. Yeah, do you know something? If West Cork Literary Festival don't invite me again, I've been there lots, then I think I should just do, Ian and I would love to do a wee tour of Ireland. Ian's got a book out, my husband has got a book out in October this year as well, but we just need to come to Ireland as well, I think. Yep, definitely.
Everybody book Maggie, everybody watching in the live stream, just, get Maggie.
Just ask me, organise it, and I'll come. And so, listen, after 2 years of near, of being locked in my flat, I'm desperate to be out. On Maggie's World Tour, that's it. Yeah,
definitely, absolutely.
I'm serious about if anybody has a bookshop or something close to them, get in touch and we'll try and get something organised. I would love to come out. Look at that pile of books behind me I've got to sell.
Yes, on that note, I suppose I am duty bound to unfortunately wrap things up, but thanks again, absolutely everyone. This has been so much fun, and thank you, Maggie, for being such a wonderful pal, mentor, generous, wonderful human being. So thank you so much, everybody, and good night. Bye, Maggie's book. Bye,
good night. Thank you, Thomasine. It's been great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.